forget that. And it looks like we are recording. Okay, good. So please know, everybody, we're recording. It's very nice when I see you guys on camera, but no, it's not required. It just makes for a little bit better for us. Thank you very much. So we're only going to try to accomplish one thing tonight. We're going to review the material that we've done so far this semester in anticipation of a midterm exam, which will be next week. We will not be having a standard class. I won't be doing a recording for class. I may do an extra recording on your project, or we may just talk about it the week after. I'm not sure yet, but if I do a recording, it'll be very short. It won't be a lecture or anything. It'll just be giving you the assignment. So we won't have class next week. The only thing you're responsible for next week is to take the test. Now, I wish I had all the answers for exactly what we're going to do. I have not written the test yet, so I don't have all the answers, but I'll be as forthcoming as I can be of what I think we're going to do. So I conducted online tests at Woodbury and at Pepperdine this past spring. I used the Moodle testing. I used Sakai courses testing, and I used a third party that I paid for myself. I used 3 different test methods, and the one I used outside worked very well, but it is outside our system. I would simply send you a link to that. I've not ruled that out. Once I got into creating an exam for Pepperdine, I remembered, excuse me, how I did the exams on courses, and what I remember from the spring was setting it up on Moodle was different, but not difficult. So I think my plan right now is, and as soon as I know this, I will let you know, but my plan right now is that I will set this up on, excuse me, on Moodle, so you will simply log in and you will be able to take the test. Here's my plan as of right now. I will give all of you students a window of at least 24 hours. It very possibly will be 48 hours, meaning when I give you a start time, you just have to take the test sometime within those 24 hours or 48 hours, whichever I give you. The reason I'm thinking I might do 48 hours for you guys is if we do, if I do 24 hours, it'll actually push you sort of into Friday night, which I don't think is the best night of the week. We're tired. If you've been working, if you've had a rough class week, I think Friday night's a rough time to do that. So what I might actually do is I might open it up Wednesday night through Friday night and just give you guys ample time. Once you begin the test, you will have a limited period of time to do the test. Once you begin the test, you need to finish it during that sitting. You can't stop the test, go away, and come back. As of right now, that I target my midterms to typically be about what I estimate to be an hour in length. Now, my experience is that my fastest students finish in 20 minutes. My slowest students finish in an hour and a half, but the vast majority of my students finish somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour. And I've given a lot of tests, so I have a pretty good feel for what that'll take. But that'll be my target, and I will let you know with ample time in advance how much time you're gonna have. I will have very specific instructions for you guys. As of right now, I am expecting the test will consist of true, false, multiple choice, matching, short answer, and the possibility of what I will call short essay. I don't want to freak you out on essay. When I say short essay, I'm not talking about long essays. I'm talking about, you know, something that would be a page or less. And it might even be like a half a page. I'll give you specific instructions, but I'm not looking for anything that is super long on that. I'm going to try to test you mostly, and I like short answers. They're I think the best way to test students, but they require more programming And if you guys have questions while you're taking the test, there's no way for you to ask me those. So I'm going to try and do a little bit more in the way of the true, false, the multiple choice, and the matching, of which there's very specific answers and there's no margin of error. Know that when I am asking questions on a test, with the exception of things like on a true, false, some are going to be true and some are going to be false. But I don't write questions to try to trick you. So if you're looking at a question that says something like, you know, where did the meaning of brand come from? I'm not asking you anything other than that. I'm not trying to trick you because I changed one letter in the sentence that way. I ask you basic questions. And so if anything looks a little funny, that's probably me and not trying to trick you. So just know that I try to be very straightforward and honest about that. I will also tell you I've gone over all of the readings so far. I went through all of the notes. By the way, I did upload the textbook PDF notes that they send to the instructor. I had done that for the first 2 weeks, but I didn't do it for the others. Just know that I've done PDFs for chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So if you want additional material that you can study, those PDFs are up there now. But I am going to be very truthful to the study guide. I'm going to focus primarily on that. If I was to recommend to you, I would say 90 to 95% of the test will be stuff that's on that study guide. And the only reason something wouldn't be on that is if I just plumb ass forgot it. I'm not going to purposefully do anything. They're on Moodle. The PDFs are on Moodle under each week. And the question just was, where are those PDFs? They're in each week's according to what we did that week. So I'm going to stick really closely to the textbook, actually, let me say it a different way. I'm going to stick very close to the study guide. The study guide comes from what we spoke about in class, and what we spoke about in class comes primarily, at least 80%, if not more, from the textbook. So there's a real simple way, in my opinion, of doing well on the test. Do the readings in the textbook, go over the notes from each class, look at my PowerPoints if you want, look at your own notes from that, and look at the study guide, and I think you'll be in good shape. So, any questions so far on that? I think that's most of the kind of the nuts and bolts of the test. Again, as soon as I have it programmed, and for the instructors to program it, it means I have to write the questions or copy and paste the questions, put them in a certain order, assign them the type of question, give them a point value. And so that just takes a little bit of time. And sometimes I can't program it exactly the way I like. And so I'll try a couple things. So it'll take me probably the better part of a couple days to get that together. But as soon as I have the test in a format that I know is going to work for you guys, I will send you an email in advance that will say, I have the test, here's how many questions, here's the types of questions. And then by that time, I will have the starting time figured out. But just know, what do I estimate? I estimate the test will be 30 questions, 35 questions, something like that. They'll be ranging in point value from, probably 2 to 5 or 2 to 6, something like that. Most of the shorter questions will be lower point values. If I happen to do a short essay or two, those might be as much as 10 points, but I won't do anything that's really huge points on that. Remember that you can use whatever materials you want for the test. You can use notes, you can use the textbook, you can use the internet. I would ask that you, on your honor, not do the test with anybody else, and that's for 2 reasons. 1, I'd like for you to do it yourself, but number 2, because I can randomize the questions and I can create a test bank of questions, I can ask the exact same question 2 different ways with potentially 2 different answers, even though it looks like the same question. So I caution anybody doing a test with somebody else because what you think might
Professor, I think we can't hear you.
Did the sound, can you hear me now? No?
I can hear you.
No.
No. Let me see if something else happened. Wait, I'm getting thumbs up and thumbs down. What the heck?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you clearly.
All right, I'm talking again. Can people show me with a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you can hear me? So now people can hear me. Okay, you guys, if this happens again, just let me know right away. The Ring Central has been very glitchy. I started about 10 or 15 minutes early just to get it going, and it took a long time for it to kind of connect. So I don't know if there's bad internet on my side, on the Ring Central side, but if the sound isn't working good, please let me know. So as soon as I've written the test, I will send you guys an email that will more thoroughly explain, but just know that it's probably going to be some true, false, multiple choice matching, short answer, maybe a couple short essays. When I say short, I mean really short. And you'll probably be given 90 minutes to do the test. If any of you have any, if you through either, because you've already talked to me about international needs, internet, or Office of Accessibility, know that that will be extended accordingly. But the class will basically have probably 90 minutes. I'll verify that for sure. You'll have probably a 2-day window of which to take the test. When you start taking the test, you will have the 90 minutes to complete the test. Any questions on that? On all those nuts and bolts? Okay, so then if you guys are okay with it, I think the best thing to do will be to go through what is on this. Is that okay with you guys if we just go start to finish? And it's 2 pages worth. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to go ahead and share the document. You guys have probably downloaded it. Victoria, I think you came in maybe after the fact. There is a study guide on Moodle right now if you want to go ahead and download that or open it up to see. We'll be going through that. I'm going to share that right now. Okay, can you guys see the document that says Marketing 3717 Brand Marketing Midterm Study Guide? Yes, okay. So here's the way that I typically like to go through these. I am not going to reteach everything tonight. If you have not been reading, if you have not been taking notes, it is not my responsibility to teach everything all over again tonight. This is truly a review. Now, I have notes that I will share with you, that I will speak to you, but the study guide that you have here, there's things that you will want to add to that, or you will want to probably make note of. For example, if we talk about the benefits of brand marketing, there is a list that was on the PowerPoint when we discussed this in class that had 8 or 10 items. I will read those 8 or 10 items, but please do not ask me to read it again and again and again because you didn't take notes on it earlier in the semester. My PowerPoints are posted up there, so if you didn't get it earlier, then download it this week and study from that. So I will go over it, but I'm not going to go over everything 2, 3, 4, 5 times because those people who did take notes, it's not fair to them, it's not fair to me to have to teach everything all over again. Is that fair enough with everybody? It's okay to ask me questions. It's okay for me to repeat most things quickly, but we're not going to spend tons and tons of time just so you guys can start taking notes now. So the study guide tracks through the book in chronological order of how we've gone through it. So these should correlate to your notes and to the PowerPoints. Remember, my PowerPoints and the publisher's notes are all posted on Moodle right now. So if we look up there, I put the prompt to burn. So if I was to ask a question, sort of where does the concept of branding come from, or what is the historical reference to it? Branding's actually been around a long time, but it's not been around a long time as we know it. The original term comes from, I believe we said it was a Nordic or a Scandinavian term of some sort that basically meant to burn. And we think of that in terms of branding things like cattle so that we know that that cattle is ours. But that term is one that we began to use when we were talking about marketing related subjects. So in particular, that second item on the list, I have J. Walter Thompson, 1901. There's actually a little bit of question on the dates of that. Some people say it's 1902, 1903. I won't ask you what the date is, but here's what the importance of that is. J. Walter Thompson was an early advertising agency. In fact, some credit his agency as being the first agency in the 1880s, 1890s that actually did creative work for clients that prepared creative materials, art materials for magazines and newspapers. And he wrote a book. He had one that was the blue book, one that was, I think, called the red book. He wrote a couple variations of these books, but he was the first person that we're aware of that actually began doing things that we now know as branding. And he used a term, trademark advertising. And what he really meant by that is he was the first guy that sort of put things like slogans onto advertising. He used mascots. And he said, when we use slogans and mascots, our ads become more memorable. People remember the brand because of the slogan or the mascot or the artwork. So he's really, J. Walter Thompson was a guy, and it is the name of a big giant agency. They were actually gobbled up by another agency a few years back, but for 100 years, they were one of the largest agencies in the United States. Excuse me. And that agency is credited with what we now know as branding. They didn't call it branding at the time, but basically we can go back around 120 years and say that's when branding as a part of marketing began. So I want you to be able to define a few concepts on the midterm. One of those would be a brand. And the definition that we used in the textbook came from the American Marketing Association. And I'll just read it to you very quickly. A brand is a name, a term, a design, symbol, or any other feature that identifies one seller's good or service as distinct from those of other sellers. A brand is a name, a term, a design, a symbol, or any other feature that identifies one seller's goods and services as being distinct from another's. So a brand basically begins to identify a company, a product, a service. So we are beginning to get this idea of what a brand is. And one of the discussions that we had is a brand is more than just a product. A product is usually a thing, but a brand goes beyond just being a thing. It's not just the tangible product, but it's also the intangible. It's our ideas about it. And that's going to be a key concept. There is then a definition. This was not in the textbook, but this is on the slides from the first PowerPoint for the first chapter. And we used an outside the textbook definition, and I will also use an inside the textbook definition. But let's do this one first. Branding, sorry, I use the outside one for, I use the inside one for brand equity. But branding, I like this one that this guy, Jay Baer, who's a kind of a big marketing consultant. He's written a bunch of books. He does a lot of consulting. He's a little bit pompous, in my opinion, but he's smart when it comes to marketing. And he said, branding is the art of aligning what you want people to think about your company with what people actually do think about your company, and vice versa. And I think that's a very simple way of looking at what branding is. And notice that he says it's what you want people to think about your company and what they think about your company. Think. He uses the term think. So it's not just saying that a product is blue or it is expensive or it cleans things. He uses the term think. And so again, this is part of this key understanding of what branding is. Branding is more than just products. Now, another thing that I brought in from outside, but we used as a discussion, was the authors Al Reese and Jack Trout, who both together and separately have written many marketing books. But they wrote a very important book back in the 70s, and it's been reprinted many, many, many times, and it was called Positioning. And they were the ones that really created this idea of things being very important that are in the minds of the customer. And part of what they said is positioning a product is partly what you say it is, but more importantly, it's what your customers think it is. And I would say that you can just simply insert the word branding. Branding is partly what you say it is, but what's more important is what your customers think about your brand. Because honestly, if your customers think your brand sucks, it doesn't matter how much you tell them it's good, they think it sucks. So one of the important concepts is that what we say and what people think, they're both important. So when we look at the benefits of branding, this concept of aligning what we think our brand is and what people think our brand is, we've learned, like, why do we even do this? Why do we have a class in this? Why do we have companies that do this? Well, because it helps us, and it helps us in several ways. And I'm going to give you the list that I had on that PowerPoint. It helps us differentiate our product or service. It helps us know that our product or service is different from somebody else's. Good branding creates value. It makes us value a product more. When Mercedes-Benz puts its logo on a car, we value that. Now, you may like Mercedes-Benz, you may not like Mercedes-Benz, but I think most of us would agree there is a certain value that comes with that. And that value is probably higher than a company like Kia. And I'm not knocking Kia, but let's face it, in our minds, we have a value that we've attached to that. And the stronger the branding, typically the more creation of value. There's a credibility that comes along with branding. The longer we know a brand, the less we think it's a fly-by-night brand. So there's credibility that comes from branding. By purchasing a brand we know, it reduces the risk of a consumer buying something they aren't going to like. If I like candy bars and I like Hershey bars in particular, well, then there's less risk for me to buy another Hershey bar. But if I buy 7-Eleven brand chocolate bar, there's a risk there. It may taste good, may taste better, but it may taste worse. So branding helps us reduce risk. I also say that branding reflects a promise. Now, one of the ways that I sometimes say that we build a brand, you make a promise, you deliver on the promise, and then you do it again. And that's really a process of building a brand in somebody's mind. If you do really well with a product one time, but your next product is not good, the customer's not really going to know what to think about that. But if you're consistent and you deliver on that promise, you're going to build that brand. Good branding also reduces search time. It reduces the amount of time it takes somebody to find a product. It prompts customers to come back again and purchase again. And we would refer to that as being loyalty, brand loyalty. And one other thing that we identified that first night of class is that good branding can create the possibility of extensions, brand extensions, new products that bear that brand name that we might be much more willing to buy than other new products. So there's a lot of benefits to branding. Another question that comes up in the textbook, that's a headline, what can be branded? Well, we identified a number of things. Products can be branded. Services can be branded. Companies can be branded. People can brand themselves. Processes can be branded. Places can be branded. There's probably other things that can be branded. I would argue you can brand almost anything. A brand is not just a product. It can be many different things. I'll just hit on one or two of these very quickly. So remember, I think I used the example that a car company, Chevrolet, is a brand. The company that makes Chevrolets is General Motors. And they've actually created their own brand for the company that makes the brand Chevrolet. So that's a case of a company in addition to a product. And then what about people? Well, I think all you need to do is look to sports or look to entertainment, and you can see people branding themselves. I look right now, what game did I watch last night? I watched the Lakers. And they won, thank goodness. And I look at LeBron James and I think there is a guy who is creating a personal brand. He's in the marketplace, he owns businesses, he is not afraid to say his mind, and he's creating a brand that relates to value and service and integrity, and I even think we can add the word quality. He's a person. He's not a product, but he's a person, and he has branded himself. So almost anything can be branded. There are some pressures today in marketing. And tell you what, I'm going to pause right there because we've sort of hit most of what we're going to talk about in chapter 1. Anybody have any questions on that stuff in chapter 1? If you do, go ahead and just unmute your mic and say something. I'll take a quick glug of water, and if not, we'll dive into chapter 2. Okay, let's move on. Marketing challenges. There are challenges to us today. 5 of the things that the textbook identified, let me mention those real quick under marketing challenges. Price pressure. Well, because there's so many products, because there's such availability to information, because products can be sourced in so many different places, there's what we call price pressure. And that means everybody's trying to make their products for less, and people are trying to sell their products for less. Related to that is the idea that there are many more competitors than there were in the past. There are fewer barriers to entry. Now, if you want to be a new car company, that's, excuse me, really expensive to launch a car brand. But even so, we've seen the launch of car brands with people like Tesla. Cars are very expensive to make. It's very hard to enter that market. But think of a product like, I'm looking at my new webcam. I don't even know what the name of this is. It says it's an Aoozi, A-O-O-Z-I. I guarantee you this has to be probably a Chinese made, probably. I think that's what I remember from the, I think that's what I remember from when I bought it. And when I bought this, I saw the exact same one with 3 different names on it, which probably means it comes from a factory, probably in China. And any company that wants to, I could make the Brian webcam. I could just go to that company. I could buy 1,000 pieces. They would put my name or my logo on it. I could brand it with my own name. And so it makes it very easy for people to launch companies right now. That's why there are so many competitors to all of our businesses and products now. Global markets, you're going to see these all begin to intertwine. Global markets, you can now source products in many, many different countries. I think I told you guys earlier this semester, if I didn't, my bicycle client, which is headquartered here in the United States, they own their own bicycle factory in Taiwan, but most of their bikes are made in mainland China, and they are now shifting their production. So they're going to keep some bikes being made in China, and they're making them in Bangladesh, and they're making them in Cambodia. The global markets have opened up. And why are they going to Bangladesh and Cambodia? Because right now, you don't have to pay extra taxes when those products come into the country. So effectively, you get a 10 or 15% discount when they come from those. Now, you might worry and say, oh, but are they good bicycles? Well, it's actually factories from China that went and set up the factories in Bangladesh and Cambodia. So yes, they're very good products. But it's an example of a globalized marketplace. There's also vast amounts of information. That's another marketing challenge that we have. Everybody has access to information. You go search on the internet, you can learn a lot more about products and services than you could 20 years ago. And then other things are changing rapidly. Trends change fast. Channels change fast. Fads and fashion change very quickly. The media changes quickly. And those are all marketing challenges. I'm just gonna, I made a quick note. Seta, I saw you coming in. If you hadn't seen it already, just know that there's a study guide posted on Moodle and we're going through that study guide. So if you wanna either download that or open that up, we're going through that right now. So the big cornerstone concept in the second chapter in our second week of class was brand equity. Brand equity. So the classic definition of brand equity is a set of brand assets that add to the value assigned to a product or service. Now, I actually said it slightly differently in class. I'll say it that way now. A set of brand assets or liabilities that add to or detract from the value assigned to a product or service. So there's a key thing there. Brand equity is when we think of a brand and the things that the brand has that are assets help to add value. But if it's branded poorly, then we would actually think of those as being liabilities and they take away from the value. And that's a very important concept for us in branding. If we brand properly, we add value to our brand. But if we brand poorly, we actually take away value from our brand. From there, we move on to strategic brand management process. This is something straight out of the textbook. And the textbook refers to this as the design and implementation of marketing programs and activities to build, measure, and manage brand equity. The design and implementation of marketing programs and activities to build, measure, and manage brand equity. So this is a process that we're going to sort of carry through the textbook. In essence, if we believe in the concept of brand equity, that things can add to a brand and those things that add to a brand add value in the minds of the customers, you can see now that we're building on these concepts. If we can add value and people see more value and they're willing to pay more for products and services, well, that's a good thing. So we as business managers, as marketing managers, as brand managers, want to try and find ways of doing that. And the textbook refers to their process as the strategic brand management process. In their process, they have 4 basic steps. The first one is identifying and developing brand plans. So that's when you're going to be doing a lot of research. You're going to create some plans for going forward. Number 2, you design and implement marketing programs to build brand equity. Number 3, you measure and interpret brand performance. In other words, you sell products, you do these marketing plans, and you measure to see if you're doing well. Hopefully you are. And then the 4th step of that is ideally you are growing the brand and you are increasing or growing your brand equity. And so it's pretty straightforward. You make some plans, you create some marketing programs, you implement those programs and you measure those programs. And if you're doing it all properly, you are growing your brand's value. Also know that branding and marketing are not exactly the same thing. Marketing is an umbrella term. I actually posted for you guys and we saw one of the slides where I called it the marketing umbrella. And underneath marketing, you guys should know this from marketing classes, from other management classes. Typically, marketing is broken down into those 4 Ps. When Larry Landre spoke, he spoke of 9 Ps, but let's talk about the 4 for a second. Product, price, place, and promotion. So it's pretty much all the stuff that we do to get a product from a company to a consumer. That's what we do in marketing. All that stuff, all those activities. So it includes things like advertising and promotion and public relations and distribution. That's marketing. In the classic definition of marketing, we would include brand elements in there, a brand, a logo. But a new concept in branding is that we actually put the term branding above marketing. And branding is sort of an executive view of this stature of a business. And what we use marketing for is more tactical in nature to build our brand. And so the example that I gave of that is 30, 40, 50 years ago, when we talked about branding, we talked about designing a logo. That was it. But when you talk to a CEO now about brands, that CEO, he or she will be very involved in what customers think about that brand because they know that is the pathway to building profitability. So think of marketing as sort of being people, places, things, activities, stuff you're doing. But branding is more about brand images, brand character, ideas, values, things that are both tangible and intangible. Remember, I mentioned earlier, thinking, Reese and Trout, what customers think. Jay Baer in his definition. We want to align what we think about a product with what our customers think about a product. So a brand is this much bigger idea. Any questions on those branding, brand equity pieces? We're going to continue with the discussion on brand equity. I mentioned that for understanding brand equity, I think you can insert the word brand advantage. So good brand equity is an advantage. It's a brand advantage. What advantage does your brand have over another brand? And if you have an advantage, then you are building brand equity. Now, we're going to start having a whole bunch of branding terms in the next few minutes. Most of these I simply want you to have an understanding of. There are actually many, 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 many more in the textbook. I've limited it to what you find on the study guide here. So the textbook talks about sort of a brand positioning model. Mostly what I want you to think of when we talk about brand positioning is the concept that we are trying to establish competitive advantages. What does our brand do better, faster, or cheaper than other brands? Remember, a critical factor of branding is to differentiate. We want to try and play up our advantages, and we want to try and avoid our disadvantages. The textbook also talks about the concept of brand resonance. I think you can insert the word brand relevance as well. And part of that is, does the brand resonate with customers? Because a brand can talk a lot about what they say or do, but if it doesn't mean much to customers, it's not resonating. It's not going to build brand equity in their minds. And then we also have this thing that is the brand value chain. Now, this is just one area. I'm actually going to stop sharing the study guide for a moment, and I'm going to open up I'm going to open up the original PowerPoint for this if I can get to it quickly. I should have left it open. I apologize. I didn't. Sorry, it's either in the end of chapter 2 or the beginning of chapter 3. Beginning of chapter 3. So there's a couple of visuals here that I think help us understand. I'm going to share couple of these slides that we went over in class. Sorry, it's going very slow. So the one slide that I wanted to reshare, and this is from week 3, and this is straight out of the textbook, is this concept of brand resonance. And this is the brand resonance pyramid, which is part of their brand resonance model. Remember, when people write textbooks, they always come up with lots of terms because they want you to buy their book. They want schools to buy their books, and so they create a lot of their own terms. You may not hear these terms in other textbooks, but the concepts are very valid. So the brand resonance pyramid basically says that we need people to be aware of your brand early on, that it has to have some initial meaning for them. As we go up in the pyramid, the brand itself may have performance, a product may be good, the brand may create imagery that you look at, that you see, that you identify with. Along the way, you will begin creating judgments about that brand. Do I like it? Do I not like it? How do I feel about it? And ultimately, if all those things have gone well, at the top of the pyramid is brand resonance. So if you want to insert the word brand relevance, and what we're trying to do is create products, services, and brands that are important to people, that people want, that they like, that resonate with them, that are relevant to them. And then the slide that came right after that in our initial discussion of this is the brand value chain. Let me give you a tip right now. You see this, you guys can see the brand value chain, right? That I'm sharing? Somebody tell me, can you see that? Yes? Don't memorize this one. Instead, I want you to look at the other one which comes after it on my PowerPoint, and I call it the brand value chain simplified. This one is the one you will see in your textbook. This is how I simplified it. Why? Because I think even for me, heck, I've got an MBA and I've worked in this area for 30 years. I find this to be complicated. It's worthy of your looking at, but in terms of knowing for a test, if I talk about the brand value chain, think of this, the simplified version. Okay, so this is one of my little tips for you. Don't waste your time trying to memorize that value chain. You don't even have to have that one open if you don't want when you're doing the test. But here's the one that I'd like you to be aware of. So if you think of a marketing activity, we do marketing activities. We market products and services. We advertise them. We promote them. We do PR on them. Along that way, we begin to create these brand images. People think of images. There are attributes to our brands. They're good, they're bad, they're cheap, they're quality. They begin to see that. We move into the area of brand equity. When those are good associations, we build brand equity. And ultimately, if we build enough brand equity, there is economic value to that. What do we mean by that? We get to make money. So each step along the way here adds value, hence the term value chain. We add value to the brand along the way. We create ads that help add value. We want to create an image in the mind of customers that adds value. We want to create brand equity in the minds of our customers, and ultimately that should add economic value, meaning we get to make money. So this is an important concept of how we take this concept of branding and actually turn it into company profits. Any questions on that? All right, I'm going to go back. I'm going to stop sharing this. I'm going to go back to the study guide. Okay, can you guys once again see the study guide? Thank you very much. Now, the textbook changes their name of the term brand equity slightly. Slightly. I'm going to give you a page reference to this because I think this will be important for you. I am on page Come on, where did it go? I should have marked it, sorry. Page 38, sorry, it's all the way, the original discussion of this is back on 38 when it's first mentioned. And it uses the term customer-based brand equity. And they give us a slightly different definition than the one I gave you earlier. Both of those are important. Now, all they've really done with brand equity is to put the customer-based brand equity. So that's really playing right in line with what we've been saying. What's a consumer knows about your brand or thinks about your brand is very important. Hence the term customer-based brand equity. And what the textbook says is that customer-based brand equity, or CBBE, which is what's on the study guide, is the differential effect that brand knowledge has on customer response to the marketing of the brand. Now, if you guys remember from the lecture on this, this is one of those kind of difficult sounding definitions, but let's break it down into three simple, quick parts. Number one, the differential effect. So what makes a brand different that brand knowledge has on a customer? In other words, what a customer thinks about this difference on customer response to the marketing of the brand. So brand equity is differences and effects that we have on brand knowledge and how customers respond to that knowledge. So if we give customers information that they value, that they understand why a product is different, and it makes them like that brand, we have created brand equity. So know that the textbook uses the term CBBE, customer-based or consumer-based brand equity. And if you go back earlier, what I had said, the classic definition of brand equity is a set of brand assets that add to the value assigned to a product or service. So remember that brand equity is this idea of building value, and remember that the consumer is the important part of that. Guys, I just realized that I didn't plug my laptop in just before class. I brought it from my office. I'm going to pause. Let's take a quick 2-minute break. That way, if you guys need to use a restroom, make a phone call, please do it right now. I'm going to get my charger and just make sure that my laptop is still charging so I don't kill this lecture in 15 minutes when it says it will. So let's just take about a 2-minute break. We'll jump back in and we'll keep going so I don't keep you guys too long tonight. Okay, come out wherever you are. I'm back. I have power going to my laptop. It will not end in 15 minutes. It will now stay working for us at least through the end of our class. Okay, so just know that I've given you two different definitions of brand equity. One is a very common one used in business a lot. The other one's a little bit more towards what the authors of the textbook say, where they simply add sort of the customer-based or consumer-based in front of it. Just remember, we always need to have that consumer-based perspective. Brand knowledge. So as people are learning about brands, they start by not knowing anything. They then have some brand awareness, and somewhere along the way, they begin to have knowledge of the brand. Along with that comes brand associations, things they think about the brand. But ultimately, we want to get them to the point where they know the brand. And I'm just going to look real quick to see if I had it down below. Not seeing it there, so I'm going to say this. You might just want to sort of write these down. I thought I had them in there somewhere, but maybe I don't. In addition to, oh yeah, okay, sorry. I've got a couple of things on that. Brand awareness is where you start. People become aware of the brand, but they may not know much of it. Then we have brand recognition, where they recognize a brand. They still may not know much about it, but they go, ah, yeah, Mercedes-Benz, that's the one with the circle with the funny little, peace symbol inside it. If you were to ask them a question and they were able to tell you Mercedes-Benz, we would call that brand recall, that they have enough knowledge of it that they can actually recall that brand. And if they can recall it, it probably means they have a brand image in their mind. And they're accumulating brand knowledge. And from that, they will also use brand associations. Oh, Mercedes-Benz, that's that quality company. They're expensive, but they're good. Kraft macaroni and cheese. Oh yeah, that's the one. There's a Ralph's brand, but I think the Kraft's one tastes a little better. It's a little creamier. I see the commercials for it. My kids like it more. You begin to associate things with that. And ultimately, if you like the product, then you have brand preference. So we want to get to this area of brand knowledge, not just have people be aware of a brand, but have them know things about it, associate things with it, and hopefully those are good things. Three very important add-ons to this, the concept of a POD, a POP, and an RTB. Point of differentiation, or a point of difference. And what is that? The textbook tells us that is what makes one product different from another. POP, point of parity, things that are the same between products. Now, most of the time, we're going to market our brands by saying what's different about our brand, what's better about our brand. Better is a form of difference. But there are times that we will use things that are the same. The examples that we used when we were talking about this in class are, if you are the newer brand, let's say we've created a new macaroni and cheese. We could say in our advertising, as good as Kraft macaroni and cheese, but for less. So we might even use a point of parity to try to raise our brand equity. What I will tell you is that points of parity will only get you up to where the other brand is. But if people don't know about your product and you're way down here, sometimes that's okay. But at a certain point, points of differentiation or points of difference will help you to rise above it. People will sometimes buy a product because it is the same as something else, usually when there's an advantage like price. But more often, people buy products because they're different and perceived to have more value to them. And then the RTB that we have on the list there, reason to believe. Is there a reason people should believe you about your brand? I usually say in marketing, the easiest way to do that is get somebody to give them a reason to believe. Crest toothpaste. 4 out of 5 dentists recommend Crest toothpaste. Okay, I'll believe the advertisement. I'll believe your brand is better. That has given me a reason to believe. JD Power and Associates says this car is the best SUV on the market. Okay, that gives me a reason to believe. Points of differentiation or points of difference, points of parity, reasons to believe. These are some of the things that we are using along the way as we begin to do marketing programs to try and build brand equity. We also talked about is that a question that you have, Victoria? Yeah, go ahead.
Can you repeat the point of parity?
Sorry, can you speak up just a little bit for me?
Can you explain what the point of parity was again?
Yeah, point of parity, point of similarity. So point of difference is one way. Point of parity means something that is the same as another product. And more often we use points of difference, but sometimes we actually might use a point of parity. So we also talked about that concept of a brand mantra. I actually find this to be a very good exercise where you create a short 3 to 5 word phrase that sort of captures the essence of a brand. You guys had an assignment on that. The textbook used things like Nike as an example of that. Most of the time, that brand mantra, you will find words related to that, similar to that, but they don't necessarily come right out and say it in their advertising. It's not the same thing as a slogan. A brand mantra is more sort of an internal mantra so that everybody understands what that brand is about. And then I just have that note that differentiation is a key concept in branding. More often than not, we're interested in what makes a brand different and value. So I always want you to think of differentiation as being a key factor in branding. Okay, moving onward. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen just so that we're going to be on the same page. So when we build a brand, I sometimes will say in classes, and I didn't say in this class, so don't take this, but I just want you to understand the concept of building a brand. So the textbook, sorry, let me say it this way. I want you to know what the textbook says, but I'm going to explain it in a slightly different way afterwards. When we were talking about brand building, the textbook gives you 4 steps. Number 1, you want to establish and ensure the brand identity. You want to answer the question, who is this brand? You want to make sure that people identify and understand that. Number 2, you establish a tone or a meaning of the brand. You answer the question, what does this brand mean? What does it do for me? Number 3, you want to create proper, the term the textbook uses, elicit proper customer responses. What do we mean by that? We want the customer to agree with what we're saying. We want them to say, if we're talking about Mercedes-Benz and we say Mercedes-Benz is a quality car, we want customers to go, oh, Mercedes-Benz, the quality car. We want their concept of it, their response to our brand messages to be in line with ours. And then the 4th step the textbook identifies is we want to turn those brand responses into brand resonance. What is our brand relationship with our customers? We want customers to agree with us and value what we have to say. So that's kind of a textbook way of looking at building a brand. That is the way our textbook looks at it. I'm going to give you this slightly different way. So I mentioned this earlier tonight, but I'm going to give you a good way to remember it. So I mentioned the idea of making a promise and repeating that promise, delivering on that promise, and doing it again. The easy way to remember this is think about what the instructions on a bottle of shampoo are. They're almost always going to be something like this: lather, rinse, repeat. Lather, rinse, repeat. And I would say with branding, make a promise, deliver on the promise, and repeat. The more you make promises as a brand and deliver on those promises, the stronger your brand will be. Now, if you think of shampoo, can anybody tell me why shampoos say to repeat the lather and the rinse? It's so you use more of it. That's really the reason behind. Most shampoo companies will tell you, no, you don't have to do that twice, but we want you to use more of it. Well, in the case of making a promise, delivering on the promise, and repeating it, the more often that message gets through to a customer, the more they're going to believe it, the more it's going to resonate with them, and the more of a relationship you create with them. Oh, Mercedes-Benz hasn't lied to me. Their cars really are good. They are very high quality. They keep their value well. It's just like a relationship with a person. If you learn to trust that person, you value your friendship or your relationship with them. If they lie to you, you don't value them. It's the same thing with a brand. Okay, so I already showed you when I went to the PowerPoint, the brand resonance pyramid and the brand value chain. Remember, if I test you on anything, it's the simplified one, not the complex one. The textbook also created this acronym of DRIVE. Now, what did they give that for? The judging of a marketing activity or program that you create for your brand, they suggested that you test it against this acronym DRIVE. And this is in the PowerPoint, but I'll say it right. I'll give it to you right now. The D stands for distinctiveness. Is your brand and the marketing of your brand distinctive? The R is relevance. Is the brand relevant? Is the marketing of your brand relevant? Have you created advertising that is relevant? The I stands for integrated. Have you integrated your brand messages? In other words, have you said the same brand messages in all of your advertising and all of your promotion? The V stands for value. Have you created value in the brand, in your advertising and promotion? I'll give you an example of how you don't create value. If you're a high-priced product and you advertise discounts, you actually hurt value along the way. So ideally, your marketing program is going to add value to your brand. And then the E is, the textbook identifies this as excellence. In other words, in the marketing of brands, we want to strive to be really good. We want to create marketing messages that are memorable, that people like, that they trust. So we're going to strive for excellence. And that's the DRIVE acronym for judging a marketing activity. So if I was to ask you on a test, please tell me what the acronym DRIVE, D-R-I-V-E, stands for, you would tell me distinctiveness, relevance, integrated, value, and excellence. And that's the example. I put my little star on my own notes here that I wanted to mention to you guys. I don't know that that question will be on the test, but it's possible that question will be on the test. And that's an example of the way I will stick very closely to the study guide. Does that help you guys, especially you guys that haven't had me before in a class? I literally might be that direct that it might come straight off the study guide that way.
Can you say what the I and E or I and B stand for again?
I'll just give you the whole thing again. Distinctiveness, relevance, integrated, value, and excellence. Okay, so let's keep moving. Brand elements. You guys did a little work on brand elements. We spoke one night about brand elements. The stuff that's inside a brand. Well, brand elements, it would be very good for you to know sort of what, if I was to ask you to list some brand elements, I might ask you to list 5 things that could be included in brand elements. Remember that these are things that textbook says trademarkable. I don't know that that means literally a legal trademark or more in the colloquial sense, something that a company can lay claim to, but trademarkable devices that serve to identify and differentiate, that important word, and differentiate a brand. So what are some of those things? A brand name, a URL, a logo, a symbol, a character, a spokesperson, a slogan, jingles, packaging, signage. Those are all examples of brand elements. When you guys create your brand in the second part of the semester, you're going to need to create all those brand elements. brand elements, those things that help us identify and differentiate brands. And the textbook, again, they're going to guide us through this, and they gave us criteria for choosing brand elements. And here's what the textbook suggested that we do when choosing a brand. We look for things that are memorable, meaningful, likable, transferable, adaptable, and protectable. So when you are creating brand elements, as you are in that process, you want to create brand elements that are memorable, not just the same as everybody else, but memorable. So when you're somebody like Amazon, when Amazon creates their company and they want to use the visual symbol of being either very tall women or the largest river in the world as a symbol for the largest bookstore, that was memorable. So if you were to call yourself Everest Books, well, why? Because Everest is the largest mountain, on Earth. I'm not sure how memorable that is. I think Amazon kind of won that battle. They created a memorable name. Is it meaningful? Well, one could argue that Google, while it has a meaning, it's not really meaningful to us, but it is memorable and it is likable, and they're able to adapt it and transfer it to all sorts of different products. And because it's unique enough, it's protectable. So it wouldn't necessarily be meaningful, but on the flip side, it's all those other things. Some people would argue that Apple originally used that term because of the idea of apples. They wanted something that had an A in it. They wanted a connotation with teaching. So there was originally some meaning to it. I don't think there is now, but that would be a case of being meaningful. So I'll just read this one more time for you guys. This is straight out of the book. Criteria for choosing brand elements: memorability, meaningfulness, likability, transferability, adaptability, and protectability. Protectability meaning, is it unique enough that we can actually lay claim to it, that we can protect it, that maybe we can even trademark it? New perspectives on marketing. Well, what do I mean by that? The textbook indicates there are some things that we should be aware of that are happening in marketing that can affect us as brand managers. I'll just list those. They're straight out of the textbook. And honestly, you could ask almost any business class, what are trends that are affecting business right now? Technology, customer empowerment, meaning customers have a lot more to say and to do. They can do their own research. They can do their own commentary. They can contact companies. Media fragmentation. The networks are not getting bigger and bigger and bigger. They're actually getting smaller and smaller. Or another way of saying that is the companies like NBC have created all their offshoots like MSNBC, CNBC. That's what we call fragmentation. With the advent of digital media rather than traditional media and things like mobile media, those are big changes that are happening. Again, increased competition from everywhere, globalization. So when we talk about challenges, globalization and increased competition are there, but we also look at those now as, can we even potentially maybe take advantage of that? If we were doing if this were a class on supply chain, I would ask you to make the argument that those are both problems that we have to deal with and opportunities. And I will tell you that I always think, you show me a problem and I'll show you an opportunity on the other side of it. Now, not in your textbook, but we discussed this because I think it's a good way of thinking through what the textbook was talking about in this chapter. I refer to this as Hemsworth's 7 Pillars of IMC. Remember, I put my name on there, not because I care about you guys remembering my name on it, but rather so that you know if you do a Google search on it, you're not going to find it. When I say Hemsworth's 7 Pillars, I posted a document on Moodle that has these, but what are they? It's 7 categories of marketing stuff that we do. So in this chapter where we're talking about creating marketing programs to build brand equity, these are the things that we can use: advertising, public relations, non-advertising promotion, personal selling, events and experiential marketing, social media, and everything else. Now, what that's really saying is these are 7 different categories of doing marketing communications. And I created this as a list for us to think of integrated marketing communications. So that concept of integrating our message, if we want to build a brand, we need a consistent message, and it needs to be integrated across all these different ways. Very simply, our advertising needs to have a similar message to what is in our public relations and our publicity. And it needs to be a similar message that if we're going to do things like coupons or contests, those have to reflect the same brand ideas that are in our advertising and PR. And if we have salespeople out there, think of a car dealership, the salesman at the car dealership has to speak in a way that represents the brand. If a Mercedes-Benz salesperson was to say, well, you know, these are good cars, there's a lot of good cars out, and Mercedes is another one, that would not be speaking to the brand. I guarantee you the salesman at a Mercedes dealer are talking to you about the quality of that brand, how good that brand is, how durable and reliable those cars are. They will speak the brand. Events and experiential marketing, that's a new and sort of growing way of marketing. But if you create an event, it needs to reflect your brand. Social media should reflect your brand. If you say that Mercedes-Benz are great cars, you shouldn't have social media that's talking about discounts on Mercedes-Benz all the time. So those come out of Hemsworth's 7 pillars of IMC. That term integrated marketing, that simply means using a similar brand message across all media. You don't want to use one media and say, we're the best, and in another one say, we're the cheapest, and in another one we say, great, tastes great, and in another one we say, less filling. We want to have the same brand message across all of those. Experiential marketing, so that's kind of the fancy term for things like event marketing, and know that we can create our own events. I think I may have mentioned in class, I got an invitation to a Lexus event where I got to go drive a Lexus, a BMW, and an Audi, 3 very similar cars, and they created this event so you could actually go drive these cars. That was very cool. But also you can piggyback on an existing event. An example I use for experiential or event marketing, anytime anybody has any product samples at Costco, that's experiential marketing right there. Try the product, taste it. If it tastes good, you might buy it. That's experiential marketing. The textbook actually uses an example of Victoria's Secret as being a company that doesn't necessarily just do in-store things or outside events, but a combination of all of those. Victoria's Secret has created large fashion shows on television where they actually create an event, a television event, to highlight their products. A couple other new types of marketing that are mentioned in this chapter that would simply be good for you to know. Permission marketing, the idea that we actually ask people if it's okay for us to send them information. We might call that opt-in advertising. Yes, it's okay, send me information. We've learned that if people give you permission to market to them, they are much more responsive to your marketing. If you push it upon them and they don't want it, they're less responsive. We call that permission marketing. Relationship marketing, actually marketing being a part, having some kind of a relationship with somebody. An example of that might be a car dealer that's not advertising that you should buy their car, but advertising rather that you might want to bring your car to their dealer to do service on it, that they're there for you. And if you need repair work, they'll take care of it. If you need warranty work, they'll do it for you at no charge. They're marketing a relationship with you. If you think of some of the ad campaigns out right now, the 2 that immediately come to mind, State Farm, and the helpful Honda person, or whatever the heck that campaign is. Both of those are actually campaigns designed to kind of create relationships with the people at Honda and the people at State Farm and potential customers. That's relationship marketing. Textbook then identifies a handful of strategies that should probably be investigated when you are creating marketing programs to build brand equity. One of those is, do you have a product strategy? Usually the product strategy is going to be related around a few key things. One of those being quality. I've used the example of Mercedes-Benz several times tonight. You might choose to make an example of quality. If you're not the highest quality out there, you might choose to avoid that, but you're usually going to pick up something else. You'll see in just a moment. Pricing strategy might be what you're going to advertise, but also things even with your product. Do you have customer service? Nordstrom doesn't talk as much about their products as they do about their service, and that's part of their product or their service strategy. And also things when people discuss loyalty to a brand, that's really sort of related to a product strategy. We want people to love our product and come back again and again and again. So we're really going to take care of them with customer service. That's all a part of a product strategy. We also might have a pricing strategy. You guys have probably learned some of the basic pricing strategies. Remember that there can only be one lowest price in any market. There's only one that's ever going to be the lowest price. And if you're second lowest and you say you're lowest and you're not, you're actually going to lose brand equity. So when you are the low price, it's something that will draw people in. Most of you probably don't go to Walmart because you think it's the highest quality store. You probably don't go there because you think they have the absolute best products there. But if you're like me and you ever do go to Walmart, you go there because you know whatever product you buy will probably be pretty low priced compared to anywhere else, either as low as or lower. There's a Walmart right up the street from my office. It literally is 300 yards that direction. And I go there whenever I'm buying a product that, for me, the quality just does not matter. When I needed to get an inexpensive plastic trash can for the kitchen here, I went right up to Walmart because I wasn't going to buy a $150 one from Williams-Sonoma. I went to Walmart and I bought the $9.95 one. And it's because in my brain, I know it says on their doors, always low prices. And that's what I went there for. I went there to get it quickly, not pay a lot. And that is part of their pricing strategy. Know that some people will bundle things into a pricing strategy. Remember that pricing is about, sorry, let me back up for a second. I know I didn't say this when we were doing the discussion on this in class, but I'll say it now. I think when somebody doesn't buy a product, it's almost never about the price. And a lot of people would say to me, oh, come on, all the time. I don't buy things because they're too high priced. I usually say it's not the price as much as it is the value. And if you can convince somebody that the value is high, then the price becomes less of an important matter. So if we're looking at things like gasoline, does the price matter? Well, it turns out most of the gasoline that we get in Southern California all comes from the same refineries. There's not much difference to it. So pricing might not matter. But on the other hand, if you buy a product that needs service, that has to have warranty work, like a car or a computer, then your concept of price and value might be different. If you know that you might need to take your Apple computer to the Apple store, then what you value might change. Apple computers tend to be more expensive than PCs. Apple computers also have an Apple Genius Bar. Now, you may like to go to that Apple Genius Bar. I don't. We actually pay a Mac guy to come to our office. But if I ever need to, I know that it's there. I know I might have to wait in line, but I know they will service my Mac for me. And I have used that service and I value that service. I had a problem with a Mac that was out of warranty and I thought I was going to have to buy a new computer. And they basically said, well, it's not in warranty, but it's a problem that started while it was in warranty. So what we're going to do is we're going to charge you $295 and we're basically going to give you a new computer. We're going to give you a new hard drive. We're going to give you new processor, going to give you a new fan, going to give you a new battery. They gave me $1,500 of a computer for $295. You bet I value that as a service. So pricing strategies often use value or what we call values-based pricing. Remember that there can only be one low price leader. I'll tell you just one other thing real quick. I didn't say this in class, but I'm going to give it to you guys simply as a gift. Don't worry, this won't be on your test. Here is my precise formula for pricing a product or a service. If nobody ever complains about your pricing, it's too low. If everybody complains about your pricing, it's too high. The right price is somewhere in between. That's my formula for proper pricing. You don't want everybody to yell at you, but you don't want everybody to not complain. If you do, then you're not making enough money. You want to be somewhere right in the middle. And then the third one that the textbook identified in this area is channel strategies. When we are creating a marketing plan to build brand equity, we may integrate channel strategies. What do we mean by that? Well, we might sell direct to customers, the Apple Store, a Chevy dealer. We might sell direct. We might sell through retailers. We might sell through independent stores. My bicycle client does not sell direct to customers. They sell through independent bicycle dealers. They do not sell through big box stores like Costco or Walmart. They sell through independent bike dealers. And they did that as a specific brand decision. Why? Because their bikes tend to be expensive and they want real bike mechanics to work on them, not some kid with a crescent wrench and a pliers in the back of a Walmart. That was part of their brand strategy to choose where they sell their bicycles. If you sell wholesale, if you sell retail, those are channel strategies. If you sell online, if you sell through brick and mortar. And then the other example that would be good for you guys to know is the difference between push marketing and pull marketing that was brought up in that chapter. Push marketing is typically when we put, as a brand manager, we push our product on distributors. So if I'm selling my new Brian's macaroni and cheese, and I go to Rouse and I say, tell you what, Rouse, I'm going to give you guys a discount to sell it so you make more money. I'm going to give you all these posters that you can put up there, and I'm going to do a contest that if people come in and they buy Brian's macaroni and cheese, they could win a new car. And so I'm trying to come up with all these ways for Ralph's to want to put my product out there so when people are there, they see it. The other way of doing that, what we would call a pull strategy, is I might advertise to people, not advertise to Ralph's, but advertise to customers and say, absolutely positively the best tasting macaroni and cheese you have ever had. And I might have a really great spokesperson for it. You know, maybe I get Gordon Ramsay to be the spokesperson for my macaroni and cheese. And I try to make the macaroni and cheese sound so good that it makes customers want to go to the store to find it. That's what we would call the pull strategy. We push it on dealers or we try to get customers to pull it through. And both of those are important decisions when we are a brand looking to increase brand equity. Now, what are some of the challenges to building brand communications? Well, people need to be exposed to our brand. They need to pay attention. They need to, not only do they need to see it, but they sort of need to comprehend it. They need to understand what we're telling them. They need to, what the textbook calls, yield to it. They need to, at a certain point, go, okay, I'm going to believe that. They then need to have the intention of buying it, and ultimately they need to buy it. That's a process they need to go through. And if we are creating brand communications, every one of those steps is important for us to take into account with our brand. We need to have people be exposed to it. We would call that brand awareness. They're going to begin developing brand knowledge through paying attention to our communications, through understanding what we say in our communications, through believing in what we say in our communications. And then they're going to begin acting upon that. They're going to have the intent of buying our product, and then hopefully they're going to buy our product. Textbook identifies sort of what they refer to as 3 broad categories that we have that we can use in the marketing communications. And these 3 would be advertising and promotion, that's 1. Interactive marketing, that's 2. And events and experiences, that's 3. So really all they've done with that is they've broken it down. All those things that are in Hemsworth's 7 pillars, they've broken it down into sort of 3. And they say that the basic options that you have to decide upon is traditional advertising, interactive marketing, and events and experiences. We also mentioned, and among those, typically we could then further break it down and say in advertising and promotion, that includes things like television and radio. We could also include in there newspaper, magazines, what they refer to as place advertising. We would call that out of home or billboards. And I think I missed one other that was right in there. Oh, and direct response. Either email directly to a person or direct mail, putting mail with their address on it. The textbook also came up with this term brand amplifiers that we spoke of that night. And what do they mean by brand amplifiers? Well, things like doing public relations and publicity on top of your advertising. And so if you are putting ad messages out there, but you can get a magazine or an influencer or a television station to do a story on your product, that's going to amplify your brand message. Publicity is going to amplify your brand message. If there's a picture in People magazine of a celebrity using your product, that's a brand amplifier. You didn't have to pay for it, but it amplifies your brand message. The 6 C's of marketing effectiveness and efficiency, that's straight out of the book, and I had this on the slides, but I'll give these to you again right now. I'll say them rather quickly, then I'll say them again slowly. Coverage, contribution, commonality, complementary, conformability, and cost. Let me go over those again just slowly for you. And these are ways of judging those marketing messages and their effectiveness. Coverage. Have we reached the right people to give them our brand message? Contribution. Will this message contribute to them giving us their desired response? Will our messages help them contribute to giving us their desired response? Commonality. Are our messages consistent? To be effective, they need to be consistent. Can all of our messages work together? That's complementary. Or as the textbook says, complementarity. I don't like that. I just say complementary. Conformability. Can our ad messages be used in many different types of advertising to many different consumers? And is it a cost we can afford? The textbook identifies 3 basic message strategies. The first one is informational, where we're very direct, we're very rational. These are very often problems and solutions, they're demonstrations, they're product comparisons. The second message strategy they identify is what they call transformational. What do they mean by that? Using imagery, talking about typical usage or a typical user. They create imagery for their message. And the third one is what they refer to as motivational. And this would be things like humor and sex appeal. We often refer to these as borrowed interest. We want to sell toolboxes. We hire a hot model and we put a picture of her on a poster. I'm not saying it's the right way to do it, but I'm saying that's an example of a borrowed interest sales message. What are some of the digital trends? The last two chapters that we touch base on talk about digital trends and secondary brand associations. Let's just go over those briefly, and then I will take any questions that you have. So in today's digital marketing, what the textbook refers to as the customer journey is different. It used to be that we had to go to a store. Before we went to a store, we didn't really have a lot of information. In the old days of Sears catalogs, maybe we had a catalog, maybe we've seen an ad, but we didn't have a lot of information. Today we have things like websites. We have Amazon. We can go see what other people have written as far as reviews about products. We may choose to still go to a store, or we may choose to shop online. Our journey as customers is very different now in the digital age. There, of course, is an increase in online retailing. That's a part of a digital trend. There's a shift in advertising dollars from traditional to digital. I always say, you show me where the people are, I'll show you where the advertising is going. We had this concept of the one-to-many and many-to-many communications. So if you think of it in the old days when we had big television shows, but we didn't have an internet, we broadcast a message, one message out to millions of people. But nowadays, we can speak to individuals with different ads in different media, and they also speak to other people. So we're not just the only one speaking to the customer, many other people are speaking to the customer. So we're speaking to many and they're speaking to many. And that's where we came up, you remember a couple little charts and they're in the PowerPoint where it's many to many. Another digital trend is there is so much data out there. People can learn about our products. They can learn about our competitive products. They can learn what's in our products. I've actually done that where I've compared the ingredients in one product to another. And then I was able to actually find a different product that had the exact same ingredients and it cost me far less. And know that you might be saying, Brian, this just sounds like a whole bunch of hooey and who cares about it. Here's why you should care about it. All of that combined has caused brands to lose control of a lot of their messaging. So remember, we as brand managers, we can put out messages about our brands, but so can anyone else. Do you think a brand cares when somebody on Amazon gives a product a bad review? You bet they do. But those reviews didn't exist 15 years ago. And now it's a big part of the online customer journey. People can get information from anywhere. And I still don't have it. When I'm in class, I dramatize this by taking my car keys out and saying, we have handed the keys of the communications car to the consumer. We are not in control of our message as much as we would like to be. Consumers are controlling as much of our message as we are. So that's why this whole idea of being consumer or customer centric or customer based starts to become more important. We as brands need to be friendly with our customers. We need to listen to them. 50 years ago, brands didn't listen to their customers. They shoved products down their throats. Now you have to listen to your customers. But with these trends that often seem ominous, know that there are new opportunities. With digital marketing, we have many more touch points. We can sell through many more places. Heck, we can sell products that we don't even have. We can do what's referred to as drop shipping. I can put a product on my website, have you buy it, and I call up the company and I say, ship it to this guy over here. Because of so many different touch points, so many different digital channels, so many different places we can advertise. And then also through digital marketing, we have these abilities to personalize things. Once I get your name, I can send you an email with your name on it. I can follow you on the internet to see what else you've been shopping for and then send you a message about something you've already been shopping for. We call that remarketing or retargeting. And that's something that just wasn't available 20 years ago. So a couple last points here on brands. The textbook identifies two things: brand meaning and brand engagement. When we spoke of brand meaning, remember that a brand can generate information about their brand and can give it meaning, but consumers can generate information and give it meaning, and the media can do that. So if you think of what people know about a brand, it's really comprised of three things: what the brand says about the brand, what consumers say about the brand, and what the media in general says about the brand. And then the buzz term that really came about 5 years ago, brand engagement. Brand engagement can be very low, where people just don't really care about the brand. I use the example of that often as being salt. If you care about salt, you might want to buy pink Himalayan salt. You might want to buy sea salt. But most of the time, we don't even buy a brand on that. About the only brand that most people can mention is Morton's salt. So a lot of people have a low brand engagement with a product like salt. Medium engagement might be, yeah, they might value a brand a little bit over another one. Maybe they value Aquafina water over Dasani or over 7-Eleven brand water. But some people may have high brand engagement. When a woman wants to buy that really cool purse, she might want to buy the Louis Vuitton purse. She might have a high brand engagement. A guy might say, you know, I'm not great at basketball, but I still want to get those expensive Nikes. That would be a high brand engagement. Know that one of the ways that we now break up the types of media that we use in digital is to refer to it as paid media, earned media, and owned media. Make sure that you are able to give me an example or two of each one of those. Paid media, well, that's advertising. Paid media is simply advertising. Earned media, well, that really comes from public relations. That comes from us having people see things about our products and we earn their trust in that. An article placed in a magazine, an influencer who sees our product and writes about it. We earn that media. And then what we call owned media. Owned media, things like our own website, our own blog, our own YouTube channel. We own that media. We control the message. One of the ones that falls somewhere in between, I mentioned in class, is social media. Social media could be owned because we might own social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, etc. But it can also be earned. People on social media that write about our brand, that's earned media. And then the last chapter discusses this concept of secondary brand associations, kind of a fancy way of saying linking a brand to other things, other people, events, or other entities to try to build our brand. So this is another way of building our brand. Textbook identifies 8 of these things. These 8 would be good for you to know. Let me list them very briefly. I will read them quickly, then I will read them more slowly again. You could link your brand to a company. You can link your brand to a country or a place. You can link your brand to a type of distribution. You can link your brand to another brand. We call that co-branding. You can link your brand to a character. You can link your brand to a spokesperson. You can link your brand to an event or a sponsorship. And you can link your brand to what the textbook calls third-party sources, things like awards or reviews. So you can link your product to a brand. Again, Chevrolet can sell themselves as Chevrolet, or they could say Chevrolet, a General Motors brand. A Macintosh can say Macintosh computers from Apple. You might gain credibility by mentioning the company name. You can link yourself to a country or a place. The example that I used last week on that was New Zealand wool. Well, a lot of people know there's more sheep in New Zealand than there are people, so there's an association with wool. Channels of distribution. Your product might be known for being consumer direct. Dell Computers basically created a direct to consumer computer market by doing this. They bypassed stores. You either bought them from a kiosk in a mall or on their website. They were one of the very first ones to do that. You can link your brand to another brand. The example that we spoke of quite a bit last week was Intel, a processor inside a computer. A lot of computers didn't have a lot of brand equity, but if they said they used an Intel processor, it raised their value. You can link your product to a character. Mickey Mouse. Another example that I gave, which you don't see anymore, is Camel cigarettes with Joe Camel. Literally a camel smoking cigarettes. You can link yourself to spokespeople. You can hire somebody who is famous to speak for your product. Matthew McConaughey and Lincoln Mercury. Lincoln Mercury is not a brand that's really known as being cool and hip. So what did they do? They hired Mr. All Right, All Right, All Right to try and make their brand a little cooler and hipper. They linked their brand to a spokesperson. You can link a brand to an event or a sponsorship. Here's one that I always think of when I think of a brand that is sort of linked to an event or a sponsorship. Dodger Dogs by Farmer John. I don't know that I would know who Farmer John is or what they are as a product if I never went to Dodger games. But I go to Dodger games, and when I think of Dodger Dogs, I know what brand they're talking about. And then third-party sources, things such as awards or reviews. If J.D. Powers and Associates says your car is the most reliable car, you might want to link your brand to J.D. Power and Associates. So linking is a way that we can gain some brand equity through someone else. Know that when you link to somebody else, you actually create new brand associations. These associations done well can be positive, done poorly can be negative, or done somewhere in between, they can be neutral. And you find you don't really gain much, you don't really lose much. But like everything else, you do it poorly, and the brand association can be negative. I saw we were on the road, my wife, my daughter, and I. We stopped to get some gasoline, to use restrooms, and to buy a couple snacks for the car. And I wanted to buy a box of chips or crackers, I think it was, like whole wheat crackers. And we were in some not well-branded gas station along I-5. And I saw a picture on a box and it looked like these whole wheat crackers. I thought, okay, reasonably healthy, they should taste good. And then, and I'm not saying this to knock it, I'm just saying it's not my cup of tea. And then it said these crackers were made with real Velveeta cheese. And I thought, you know what? I don't want real Velveeta cheese on my crackers in a box from a gas station. And that was a negative brand association I had by that cracker company linking with Velveeta. So a lot of times it can be positive, but not always. I have the point of saying key factors of linking to secondary entities. Well, okay, so just very simply, all that really is the textbook identifies three different factors that you should consider. Number one, are people even aware of who you're linking to? Because if they aren't, there's no value to it. Number two, even if they're aware of it, does it have meaning for them? Does that other brand bring meaning? I think I mentioned to you guys, in the early days of talking about Intel, only real computer geeks knew who Intel was. But they advertised it so long, we all kind of got to know, oh, Intel, they're the company that makes your computers faster. And then the third key factor to linking to secondary brand associations is the idea of, does the value of the brand you're linking to transfer to you? Can you bring that value over? And I would say that, for example, Ford did some co-branding by linking to Eddie Bauer on some of their SUVs and pickup trucks. I think that worked. There was a company, a rival to my bicycle client, that licensed the Porsche name to put on a bicycle. Well, it was made in the same factory in China that my client's bicycle was, and I don't think that transferred very well. So think of, are people aware of who you're linking to? Is there meaning to the people you're linking to? And is that linkage, is that value transferable? Last two things. Number one, commonality versus complementarity or complementary. Those were the examples that I gave. Commonality, well, there's sheep in New Zealand, and they make a lot of wool products. So it would actually make sense to link those together as New Zealand wool. The complementary association, the example that we gave of that a week ago is Cold Stone Creamery ice cream. And in Canada, they put Cold Stones either next to or in the same storefront as Tom Hortons coffee shops, because they learned that a lot of people buy ice cream as a dessert and then they want a cup of coffee. And that's complementary brand linking. And then the very last thing that I have on the list there is the concept of a brand extension. I mentioned this earlier tonight, but basically that's the idea that once you have an established brand and you have brand equity, you might be able to transfer that equity to another product. So the example that I gave last week on that, when I was a kid, if you wanted a diet soda that came from the Coca-Cola company, you bought a product called Tab. So as a kid, I grew up drinking Coca-Cola. My mom liked Coca-Cola, so we didn't drink Pepsi. We drank Coca-Cola. And then my friends' older sisters drank Tab. So when I went on a trip with them and they brought cases of Tab with them, I learned to drink Tab. Well, Tab really brought nothing to the party in terms of branding. And so what Coca-Cola did is they slowly phased out that brand, and they took that product and changed the name to Diet Coke, and it became a brand extension of Coca-Cola. So they were using the value in Coca-Cola, which is one of the most valuable brands, one of the brands that has the most equity out there, and they took a little piece of that equity and they moved it over to Coca-Cola or to Diet Coke. And if Diet Coke tasted terrible, then it would have been a bad brand extension. But for those of us that drink diet drinks, Diet Coke's not bad. You might prefer Diet Pepsi, but in the grand scale of diet drinks, it's probably pretty good. So I think they leveraged the brand extension pretty well. And with that, those are the points. As I said earlier, my plan is to stay very close to the study guide that I've given you and those topics. So if you are rereading those chapters or reading the notes and you go down one of the rabbit holes that the textbook has and you say, Brian didn't talk about any of this, the chances are I'm not going to test you on that. So I think 95% of what you'll be tested on will come out of these notes here that we just went over tonight. Does anybody have any questions that I can answer? I did cover the basics of it. Remember that I haven't written the test. I'll be doing that in the next couple days. As soon as I have the test written, I will send all of you an email that tells you as much as I can about the test. Expect some true false, expect some matching, expect some multiple choice, expect some short answer, and maybe a short essay or two. And by short, I mean pretty darn short. You will probably be given 90 minutes. You will probably be given 48-hour window with which to take your test. And my plan as of right now, unless this changes in the next day or two, it'll be on Moodle, which means you guys just log into Moodle and the test will be there for you. So I'm going to try and make it as simple as straightforward. Remember, next week we are not going to have class. But in probably the 24 hours before class and the 24 hours after when class will be, that'll be your window to take the test. So probably from 6 days from now to 8 days from now, you're going to take it during that window. If anybody has any major problems with that, let me know. If you have problems with internet, let me know. If you have questions, other questions about this material, please feel free to send me an email this week. Please try not to wait till Wednesday or Thursday to ask me the questions, only because if I get really busy at my office and I can't get back to you quickly, it's best if you can maybe ask those questions by the weekend or early next week, you know, Monday, Tuesday kind of thing. Any other questions on like the nuts and bolts of the test?
I do.
Yeah.
So from my understanding, it's going to be outside Moodle, and there's going to be
Wait, I'm sorry, it's going to be outside Moodle?
you're going to post a link outside Moodle. Is it going to be like Proctor? Like,
No. I'm actually probably going to use the Moodle testing, not outside. Only if I have problems programming Moodle, and I haven't done it since spring, so I know I did at least 2 tests on Moodle and it worked out okay, so I don't think it's going to be a problem. I was just mentioning earlier that if I have problems with it, I could use an outside one. But if it's the outside one, I'll just send you a link, and all you do is go in with a code and you do it. It won't be a problem.
and then you say it has a 90-minute time limit? Am I right?
Yeah, I'll actually finalize that time after I've written the test. But I try to write the test, so I assume you can do it in about 45 minutes to an hour, and then I add extra time after that. But I'll always give you what I believe to be ample time for the test. If I have, you know, approximately 30 questions on the test, and I give you 90 minutes, that averages 3 minutes per question. You know, something like that. If by chance I write more for whatever reason, I'll give you more time. But I'll just try to be as fair as possible on that. And looks like more questions coming in. You know, the question is for the essay, is that something you just upload in a Word document? Probably not. It'll probably be short enough that I'll just give you space on the question for it. When I'm saying essay, don't stress out over when I say essay. Most of the online tests refer to short answer, and essay is the same thing, meaning it is not an objective answer like 7. It's an answer where you have to write stuff in. So when I say essay, let me see if I can give you guys an example so that you don't have to worry about this. I might ask you the question of identify 3 reasons why the concept of branding is important in today's marketing and business world. And I might say, please conclude your answer in approximately 200 words. That's going to be a couple paragraphs at most. And you might say, branding is a new higher level thinking that's more than just marketing. It's actually looking into the minds of the consumers. By using brand elements, we can create brand imagery that can build brand equity. And if we build enough brand equity, we actually have beneficial economic outcomes of us making more money. That's what I'm talking about. Very short. So I almost hesitate to call it essay, but literally it might be identified on your test as an essay question. But I'm not talking about writing 6 pages in a Word doc and uploading it. You're not going to need to do that. Think of it as a long, short answer. Is that confusing enough for you? I won't have essays, I'll have a few long, short answers. Angel's laughing, nobody else is laughing at that. That's funny, you guys. Actually, I might have to use that in other classes now, long, short answers. So we're gonna have a few short answer questions and some long, short answers. But I will, as soon as I've written it, I will let you know. So you're not gonna have surprises. I will give you guys a full rundown of what's gonna be the whole test procedure before you guys take the test. The time, where it's going to be, how many questions, what types of questions. But having taught, I don't know, 60 or 70 sections of classes in the last 15 years, I tend to write pretty similar styles of tests. I think if I did all true, false, and multiple choice, it doesn't really test you as well. If I did all short answers, it would take me forever to grade it. So I do a combination of both. Any other questions anybody have? No? Sure? Well, if that's it, then I'm going to say we are done for tonight. I'll stay on here for another couple of minutes if anybody has any last questions. But please send me an email with questions if you have them later in the week. Look to your emails. As soon as I have it written and I have the full instructions for you guys, I will give it to you. And I'll say good luck. I won't see you next week at this time, but I'll see you 2 weeks from now at this time. Okie doke. Good night, you guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Professor,
Yeah.
I have a question about the class Facebook group.
Yeah.
So I haven't really been active on that. And you say we have till the midterm to post. I only posted one article, honestly.
How many did I say we were supposed to post?
You said post 3 before the midterm.
So you got to do, if you want to get a good grade for that, you need to post 2 more.
But I ran out of. Can it be the same content? Because
What do you mean the same content?
please. Or okay, never mind. I thought we needed to do one of our related content. I misread it. Okay.
No, it's the whole idea of that is to simply, the whole idea was to get you guys thinking about brands and branding during the semester. So you'd have topics on your mind. So you'd be thinking along those lines.
Yeah, I have also not posted yet, but would it be acceptable for me to post 3 articles within the next week?
So here's the good news and here's the bad news. You can post 3 articles because I said you need to post them before the midterm. What I think I also asked you guys on that is to comment on other articles during the semester.
Yeah, I've done that like a few times. So
okay, so that's what I'm asking for. So the simple answer is yes, get them done in the next week.
Okay.
As soon as midterm time comes, then we shut that down.
All right.
Sounds good.
Okay? But you guys got time.
Appreciate
I mean,
it.
honestly, you can knock those out. Find a cool article about a new brand or a new ad campaign about a brand. You know, post a few sentences saying, you know, oh, I think this is a great way to do advertising for this brand. I think this brand has a lot of equity. You know, there's a lot of people that really like this brand. What do you think? That's the kind of post that I'd like to see.
Okay, sweet.
Okay?
All right. Thank you, Fed.
Any other questions from anybody?
Have a good one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Brian.
Yes.
Yeah, we talked last week. About the layer assignments that I was about to submit.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did submit like a couple of them, and I did also submit the most recent ones. But the previous ones like homework 1, the brand, the good and bad brands.
Yeah.
Also, the brand research, I did submit it. Homework 2, the brand mentors, and the brand elements. These 3 homeworks, I couldn't I couldn't submit it because it was overdue already.
Just email them to me.
All right, perfect.
Just email them to me. That'll